Hi, I wanted to have an opportunity to address you about something based on both an article that I recently read that I think is really helpful, as well as what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing around me and from many of you, and even from the way the staff works together now that we are weeks into this pandemic and weeks into the isolation. I remember years ago when first became a rabbi here, hearing from some uh, new retirees who were mentioning the fact that they were expecting all sorts of wonderful things about retirement, but they didn't have any idea what it would be like to be with their spouses 24/7. And so they slowly had to begin to find things for each of them to do because they had spent a lifetime as a couple, and often a very happy couple, busy with their own jobs and with the kids, etc. And spending the time only together was really difficult. So now, many of you as couples, and many of you as couples with little children, and we know how difficult that is for you, are spending all this time together, and you aren't trained for that, you're not used to that. And so what happens is that little irritants become large irritants. I don't like the way my wife puts things back into the refrigerator, someone might say, or I don't like the way my husband leaves the table after he eats lunch, or whatever it might be. They're little irritants become big irritants in relationships, and that's not unusual. In fact, we have to learn how to cope with those things. But they can build up, and there are different coping mechanisms, and I'd like to speak about a few of them. The first thing you know is that everyone is pretty anxious. So that even those who are handling it well, and you say, "How you doing?" and they say, "Oh, great, I go swimming every day and I walk every day and everything is good." There is an underlying anxiety because we don't know how long this will be. We don't know when the pandemic itself will be over. We don't know what's happening economically. We don't understand or know when our kids will be back in school. And so anxiety is a force that often has us being very reactive to situations. So something might happen under normal circumstances. We won't be very reactive. We won't react with anger or with a lack of patience. But when we're anxious, we do. And so it is important to recognize our own anxiety and for each one of us to recognize just how very difficult this is. And what we know from the statistics out there right now is there's a rise in abuse in families, and that's really unfortunate. And people are drinking more than they usually drink, and so that's also leads to other types of issues and to other types of problems. And then there is the fact that the kids are home, and that there's a lot of tension around that with the fact that the kids are home. So in this Time Magazine article, which had 11 suggestions from therapists as to how to handle this situation, there are a few really good ones, and I'd like you to think about them, and I'd like to recommend them. The first is to cool it with your criticism. Everyone can be very critical of everyone else, and there are times where we can't just look outward at the other person, but let's look at ourselves. And if something bothers us, it may not always be about the other. In fact, most of the time it's about ourselves. And so we can look at why is it that this evokes this stuff in me, and we can just hold on to our critique. We don't always have to say everything that bothers us, and that's really important. I think also that it's important for us to ask our spouses questions about why they feel in a particular way without being accusatory. Be a little more curious about things as opposed to furious about things, and maybe delve a little bit deeper. And in fact, this time, which is so difficult on the relationship, can in the long run actually be helpful for the relationship. We all feel differently about the current situation, and that your spouse is not going to feel the same way that you are. Some people are more anxious or more nervous or more frightened than other people, and I think that we have to recognize that, and we have to allow our spouses to give voice to those different feelings. Um, Something else, and especially when you have kids, I think it's really important that you exchange some time. That it shouldn't be one parent taking care of the kids all the time, but rather buy time from each other, give each other time, go for walks alone. If you're going to go out and go shopping, do that alone so that you can actually have a little bit of breathing space and a little bit of freedom, and you can make phone calls to your friends, etc. And I think it's good to buy some time. In the Time magazine article, they note that our ancestors on the plains, and those weren't the Jewish ancestors necessarily, but they had time for intimacy. And if you can find time for intimacy, if you can find time for loving, it's really quite helpful, I am sure. And so that you should make sure that you can do that. The other thing is to make some plans with your days, although it's very hard to, when every day kind of melts into every other day. I think it's important to be able to say, I'm going to structure my day, and each one of you structure your days, both to do things together and to do things differently. If you feel like fighting, don't do it right away. Schedule it for another time. And don't do it in front of the kids. And therefore, you can be a little more rational in the fight, and you don't have to be as personal and as hurtful towards each other. Try not to hurt each other. Understand everybody is hurting right now. Everybody is anxious right now. No, along the lines of doing things that are different, respect each other's boundaries with stuff. I want to watch a movie. My wife wants to watch the same movie, and I'm ready to watch it, and she's not ready to watch it. So I need some patience. I have to wait sometimes until she wants it. And all of these are suggestions, not just for now, but for all times. Tell your partner what you want. Tell your partner what you need. And listen to your partner about what they want and what they need. Sometimes, we just assume we know everything about the other, but we don't. And I think it's really important to be able to express that which we want and that which we need. And finally, try comedy. Watch funny movies, comedic movies, watch stand-up comedy, watch comedians in cars getting coffee, whatever it is, because laughter goes a long way, and sometimes it's hard to find it. We're not going to find it on the news. We're not going to find it by continuing to watch cable news, but we can find it in other places, so try for it. So listen, I wish you luck, and stay patient with each other, and stay as loving as possible, and give your spouse, give your lover some space. I'll be in touch with you soon.